ये किस चीज का है?
ये तो इसका है ना, इसका लगे रहो, लगे रहो,
इसको लगे रहा है
लगे रहो, लगे रहो।
इस कुंदन ने बोला तो देखो
our distinguished dignitaries are on the dais, I would request everyone to settle and kindly put your phones on silence mode. Thank you. Namaskar, good evening, honorable dignitaries, distinguished guests, colleagues, and dear students. On behalf of Public Health Foundation of India, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you on our 13th Foundation Day lecture. We value you all who are sharing this special day with PHFI family and have been with us for more than a decade now. It is wonderful to see so many people who have been an integral part of our journey present here today. We are also happy to share that this event is being streamed live for people who are remotely connected to us, thanks to technology. I would like to start today's session by quoting a few lines by Ella Wheeler Wilcox on Wings of Fate. One ship sails east, another west, while the self-same breezes blow. It is the set of the sail and not the gale that bids them where they go. As the wind of air are the ways of fate. As we voyage along through life, it is the set of the soul that decides our goal and not the storm and the strife. This year, we enter our teens. We are adolescents. We, like adolescents, understand the importance of being clued in with all that is in trend. So it's befitting that the theme for this year's PHFI Foundation Day lecture is Advancing Public Health Efforts Through New Technologies. We are fortunate to have with us Dr. Anurag Agrawal, Director, CSIR Institute of Genomics and Integrated Biology, IGIB, to deliver this lecture, and Professor Saeed E. Hasnain, Vice Chancellor Jamia Hamdard, to chair the session. May I now request our President, Professor K. Srinath Reddy, to welcome you all and introduce the chair and the speaker. Professor Reddy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a great pleasure to welcome you all to partake of this celebratory event along with the PHFI family. Indeed, you're all members of the PHFI family, albeit an extended family. And the true test of a family comes when there are some challenging situations for us to face. And as you're all aware, we did have some rough times in the last 2 years. But it was with your solidarity, support, and warm friendship that we have actually surmounted some of those challenges and are now back to where we began, pursuing our mission with a great deal of vigor and dedication. And that's the only excuse I can give you for not having had a Foundation Day lecture last year. But now that we are back to form, we are very happy to have you for the Foundation Day lecture. And we are very delighted that we have two distinguished scientists to help us make this event worthwhile in linking up technology with public health and its applications. Indeed, even the time when we went through some period of difficulty, we actually took comfort from what a philosopher said. This was philosopher Virgil who said, maybe one day we'll be glad to remember even these hardships. And today we do, and we look to the future with a great deal of optimism. And particularly we are delighted that with Mr. Ramadorai as our chair, who is not only a visionary institution builder, but an eminent problem solver, we are going to see that each one of our challenges melt away in the sunshine of his leadership. But as we move forward, we have had some happy news to communicate to all of you. We did feature in the list of 30 institutions who were chosen by the Empowered Expert Committee as institutions of eminence. However, that decision still awaits the governmental approval of the recommendations which were made to the UGC. We shall await what happens. But the very fact that we were listed as such is indeed a matter of considerable pride and satisfaction. We also have been admitted to the membership of the National Knowledge Council, and we have now the ability to participate in a very valuable research and academic network across the country. And we not only to link up with multiple other institutions, but also link up each of our institutions together in a network. We have been invited by the Research Information Systems, which is a think tank of the Ministry of External Affairs, to be the knowledge partner for advancing public health capacity building in Africa, which is going to be one of major initiatives of India. We have also been identified as a knowledge partner by the Speakers Research Initiative, which has been established by the Speaker of the outgoing Lok Sabha, Mrs. Sumitra Mahajan, in order to provide policy briefs and to have an opportunity to interact with parliamentarians on issues related to health. She has opened up this initiative in multiple areas, but in the area of health, we have been invited to be the knowledge partner. And we have been partnering with several state governments and also several central government agencies as well in helping to build capacity as well as provide technical strength to some of the programs, both from the point of view of design and as well as from the point of view of delivery and evaluation. So PHFI continues to serve public health in very many ways, and our 5 institutes as well as the ancillary campus in Bengaluru are marching ahead with their academic programs with MPH and PhD in 3 institutions, and the diploma programs in the other 2 institutions also set to graduate to MPH programs this year. And a variety of on-campus and distance education programs, supplemented by a number of short-term training programs, are actually building capacity of public health professionals in very many domains, and we hope all of them will contribute to India's health system strengthening. So we are doing fairly well, but we would like to do even better. And this is where I will move from a philosopher of the past to the sports field of the present day. The All Blacks of New Zealand, who are undisputedly some of the most remarkable rugby champions the world has ever seen, they have a quote: "Better never stops, better every day." And that's what we want to be, better every day. And that we will do it with your help. And to show us how to be better, we have today 2 eminent scientists helping us to move through a discussion on the application of health technologies for public health. And this particular theme has been chosen essentially because we too are interested in health technologies, not only as people applying health technologies in the field and evaluating them, but also as creators of technology. We have an Affordable Health Technologies unit, which has been also creating innovative technologies for primary health care and evaluating them. So it is important for us to get guidance from eminent scientists as to how best public health itself and we at PHFI can proceed along with this path and be very productive contributors to the applications of appropriate technologies for advancement of public health. To chair this session, we have Professor Syed Hasnain, who is a fellow of all major science academies in the country, and is also a fellow of the Third World Academy of Sciences. He is a recipient of Germany's highest civilian award, the Order of Merit from the President of Germany, equivalent of India's Bharat Ratna. The only Indian so far, and one of the very few persons globally. He was recently conferred with ICMR's B.R. Ambedkar Award, the highest award for excellence in biomedical research. Professor Hasnain was a member of the Science Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. He has received also the Humboldt Research Prize from Germany, the very exclusive Robert Koch Fellowship, the only Indian so far of the Robert Koch Institute in Berlin. He is the first Indian elected as a member of the German National Academy of Sciences, Leopoldina, and he has received several other major awards nationally and internationally. He has taught at the Delhi University, worked at the National Institute of Immunology, was the first director of Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, Government of India, and made CDFT a gold standard for DNA-based crime investigations in the country. He has been associated with the academic councils, governing bodies of many scientific and academic institutions, and has been a member of the University Grants Commission. Professor Hasnain is known internationally for his research on Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the TB-causing bacterium, and has more than 250 publications in peer-reviewed journals of high impact. He is an invited professor at IIT Delhi, where he has established a laboratory for basic research and development of technology platforms for tuberculosis. Previously, the Vice Chancellor of the Central University of Hyderabad, he is presently working as the Vice Chancellor of the Jamia Hamdard, New Delhi, and he is also professor and head of the Jamia Hamdard Institute of Molecular Medicine. You are very welcome, sir, to chair this session and lead us on the way to what would be a very informative and interesting evening. Our speaker of the day is again a very distinguished scientist. Dr. Anurag Agarwal is currently director of the CSIR Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology. He graduated in medicine from All India Institute of Medical Sciences in 1994. I can take some parochial pride in that, also having been from AIMS. He followed it by a specialization in internal medicine, pulmonary disease and critical care from Baylor College of Medicine, Houston, and a PhD in physiology from the Delhi University. After serving as a faculty member of the Department of Medicine at Baylor, he joined IGIB in 2007, where he established the Center of Excellence for Translational Research in Asthma and Lung Disease, TRIAL, that's the acronym, and the CSIR Program for Effective Application of Community Health Efforts through New Age Information Technology. The acronym is EACH-IT. You obviously have a flair for nice acronyms. His research activities include use of experimental and computational model systems to study disease, especially asthma. Dr. Agarwal believes that health data analytics with artificial intelligence applications to be the new frontier of medicine and is actively engaged in promoting the confluence of medicine and informatics. There's more than 100 scientific publications, mostly original research findings communicated in high-impact journals. He is an alumnus of the Kavli Frontiers of Science program of the US National Academy of Sciences, as well as nationally in the form of the Shantiswarup Bhatnagar Award, the National Bioscience Award, Wellcome Trust DBT Alliance Senior Fellowship, Lady Tata Young Researcher Award, and the Swarna Jayanti Fellowship of the Department of Science and Technology. He is a member of and fellow of numerous academic societies and serves on the advisory bodies of several institutions, including the Public Health Foundation of India, the Lady Tata Memorial Trust, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Center for Brain Research, and the Indraprastha Institute of Information Technology. He is also an advisor for startup companies and healthcare organizations. Therefore, we are privileged to have Dr. Anurag Agarwal be the speaker of the day, delivering the Foundation Day lecture and leading off on an interesting panel discussion to follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Reddy. I would now like to request Mr. S. Ramadurai, our chairman, to kindly address the gathering. Sir.
Dignitaries on the dais, Dr. Syed Hasnain, Vice Chancellor Jamia Hamdard, Dr. Anurag Agarwal, Director CIR Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology, Professor Srinath Reddy, President of Public Health Foundation of India, all the dignitaries, some of the governing board, EC members, Public Health Foundation of India, academics, and the students, very warm welcome to the Founders Day celebration today. I think as Professor Srinath Reddy mentioned, I think both the topic and the speakers behind it are absolutely the best ones we can get to hear and learn, which is the most critical need of the hour in terms of the public health and the challenges of making sure everybody has access to that. When we look at India as a country, I think the scale of anything is what either scares us or we look at it as an opportunity which needs to be addressed without any question. The critical needs when you look at scale are simplicity, affordability, accessibility in every corner of the country, and innovation that goes behind it to make it happen. When we have an opportunity like that, and more importantly in the health area and the public health area, I think the role of technology and the integration of technology and embedding the technology into this becomes more exciting than anything else. And when we look at our country and we travel around the country and the kind of problems which are there, even access to simple things like the nearest center, when people tell us, I go 15 kilometers or 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers, whether it's for health, whether it's for education or for skills, I think we need to ask ourselves the question day in and day out, are we not accelerating the pace at which this has to be done? Because even when you look at a very simple thing like a children's hospital, which we recently built 2 years ago, where a super specialty children's hospital was done, I think the affordable healthcare as a critical parameter can easily be done, but I think we need the passion and the energy behind it, and that's what Public Health Foundation of India is all about. When we looked at all the innovation that have been put there, whether it was the Swasthya initiative or the Empower initiative, some of these parameters have been kept completely in mind to make it happen so that the affordability part of this is understood. I think the medical devices, access to medical devices, everywhere I go, they keep saying it's an imported product and it costs 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs per unit. And when you are part of the foundation and I look at some of these things, we see as opportunities, and that's what excited me to be a part of this institution. I want to wish the institution the very best, thank all the speakers today, and look forward to a very exciting evening. Thank you, Professor Srinath, for putting this together for us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Professor Saeed E. Hasnain to kindly share the opening remarks. And this will be followed by Dr. Anurag Agarwal's lecture. Thank you.
Dr. Ramadurai, whom I have known indirectly for a long time. When I was working at the Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, together with the TCS, we developed a new program to look at biological data. Dr. Srinath Reddy, again, a good friend, old Hyderabad connection. In fact, when the Phfi started, I don't know if you remember, sir, or not, I invited him to get associated with the University of Hyderabad. We will affiliate you and allow you a degree status, granting status, but subsequently they moved up much faster and now doing much better. It was a good thing not to accept the offer in the long run when you look at it. Anurag is a good friend from a long time. Now he has become the director, very well deserved selection. And the way he's changing the institute, it is all for others to use this as a model to study. I see eminent people in the audience. I see Dr. Sneh Bhagwa here. I see Dr. Agarwal here. I see Dr. Jha here. And my friend, former DGHS, Bombay, Maharashtra here. And many others, distinguished friends, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin by thanking Srinath for giving me this rare honor to be here for this occasion and to share this session. And I think an old person who played a key role is sitting quietly at this part, Rao Ayagiri, who I invited to join me at University of Hyderabad. He preferred to stay at Delhi for right reasons and didn't go to Hyderabad. It's all their effort that brought me here. Yeah, I really consider this as a rare honor. I'm a medical microbiologist by training. I used to work at the National Institute of Immunology. And today, after finishing a term more than 5.5 years at University of Hyderabad, I was invited by IIT Delhi, moved to IIT Delhi. When I first joined IIT Delhi, people used to ask me, "Tum biologist, so IIT mein kya kar rahe ho?" And I used to tell them, look, I didn't apply to IIT. I didn't get selected through normal channels. I came through backdoor entry. So I'm trying to do something to justify my presence. And for 2 years, I tried to convince, and I must say, with huge success, my colleagues, engineering colleagues at IIT Delhi, to get into biology, do nature-inspired engineering. And I'm very proud that today, more than 50 of my colleagues at IIT Delhi are doing biological related research, more than 50 of them. And biology is now one of the top agenda of IIT Delhi. One of our alumni has donated a big amount of money to consolidate all biology activities. I have also made use of this closeness to engineers, and I'll tell you in a few minutes what we are doing with them. I'm invited to not only to give lectures on tuberculosis, which I work on, but also including a recent paper we published in one of the Nature journals, where we said that you can repurpose 3 existing drugs that bring down the IC50 of existing TB drugs to more than 50%. And it could be a generic approach to treat all infections, human pathogens, that operate via biofilm. That is a separate story. Some other time, perhaps we can talk, but not for this audience. But the way things are doing in terms of technology today, in the US, the tricorder is a wonderful device that can tell you almost everything about you, what disease you're likely to suffer. Those technologies, etc., are good. But I think in India, we need new technologies that are good for India. I'll give you an example from my own area, that is the TB area. I work on tuberculosis. Together with IT colleagues, we have been able to develop 2 new platform technologies for TB diagnosis. TB is the largest killer in the world for any bacterial pathogen, and the largest number of deaths occurred in India. The irony is, it's completely curable, completely treatable, but yet people die. Why? Because they are not diagnosed early. Good devices are there, DNA-based technologies are there, but they are not affordable. Today, TB diagnosis is still done conventionally in the primary care centers in the villages and small towns by smear sputum microscopy and looking at it after staining it. And the power of converting a microscope, instead of using a light microscope, using a fluorescent microscope is enormous. It greatly improves the detection of TB bacteria in sight. So what we have done, we have created 2 disruptive technologies at the IIT Delhi. One is, we call it CTB, a child drishti. And that's what CTB does, is a small device that sits on an ordinary light microscope and converts that into a fluorescent microscope. When we went around telling what we are doing, we got so much of traction. We got funded by the Bill Gates. We got the Gandhi Young Investigator Award from the President of India. In fact, sir, Professor Ramaduraiji, we got also funded a big amount of money, a few crores by the Tata for early startups. The other device, and now the ICMR has asked us to develop this at all of their primary healthcare centers, about 21 of them, to see how it can be used. So we just got a green signal from them. Our problem is we have been working with 3D printed converters. Now we have to get commercially printed devices, commercially manufactured devices. So we are going to be going into it. The second intervention that we have developed, again a disruptive one, we call it as IMC square. And we are giving also a very sexy name for that. IMC square, people will not understand. So common name. IMC square, what it does, it is based on some of the work that we did. We identified on the coat protein of the bacterium something which could be something which could be exclusively picked up by the TB and nothing else. And then we created a detection system where the patient can spit in a small vessel. The sputum, as some of you who have seen it, is a very viscous thing. It cannot be dealt directly. You need to make it more like watery. And there again, we have a patented technology that we developed at IIT Delhi. And through that technology, we were able to thin the sputum. After that, immunomagnetic cell capture takes over, and in a matter of less than 1 hour, you get a purified TB bacterium and an answer, yes TB or no TB, with no biological hazards, no containment requirement, no requirement of air conditioning things, no requirement of a trained operator, nothing. So these are all, we believe, are disruptive technologies which can be used at the grassroots level. One TB case that goes undetected will cause infection to 20 fresh people. And that's where we are trying to target, bring down the numbers of people who are currently escaping detection. So this is something which I would perhaps some other time talk about it. Currently, I'm on deputation from IIT Delhi, work for Jamia Hamdard. I'm very happy to share, I already did mention that Jamia Hamdard also is one of the top, in fact, as per the recommendation of the expert committee, high power committee, we have been recommended as the 5th highest ranking private university in the country. And by that token, if the government of UGC accepts the recommendation, not only PHFI but also us will be recognized as institution of eminence. When I was working for Hyderabad University, we beat DU, we beat JNU, we became #1. And today Hyderabad University is also among the top 8 in the country, again subject to UGC exception. IIT Delhi, where I am working today, is the 2nd highest ranking institution in the country in the public sector. #1 is expectedly IISc Delhi, #2 IIT Delhi, #1 is IISc Bangalore, #2 IIT Delhi, and #3 is IIT Bombay. As and when the government releases the remaining list, all these other institutions will come in. Thank you once again for inviting me to be here, Srinath. I really feel honored. Small man like me, you've asked me to come and be here amongst all giants that I see. It's a great honor. Thank you.
Dr. Anurag Agarwal.
It's a great pleasure to be here. I was told once the best way to improve yourself is to surround yourself with minds better than yours. Every time I come to PHFI, that's always been true. Today has been no exception, meeting people like Dr. Ramadurai, Professor Hasnain again, Dr. Reddy, so many dignitaries now. And very importantly, when I saw her, I couldn't help talking about this Professor Sneh Bhargav, who was the director when I joined AIMS in 1989. I distinctly remember the very first day when all of us were sitting down getting an introduction to what AIMS was about. And most importantly, she was the one standing between us and the seniors waiting to drag us outside. So, the sight of her always makes me feel very secure and happy. So, with that said, ma'am, it's absolute pleasure to have you in the audience. So the topic I was given was advancing public health efforts through new technologies. And whenever you see new technologies, there are always two types of people. On one side, there are guys who probably would protest, no wheels required. On the other, there are people who see the creative destruction of medicine at the beginning of AI and tech. The truth, as usual, is somewhere in the middle. Technology by itself is technology. New by itself simply means new, which means not fully tested. And to truly make impact at a public health scale, the keywords that were mentioned were simplicity, affordability, and innovation. Innovation can be at the level of deployment, smart use, custom fitting it to the circumstances of your nation, and over the course of the next few slides, I will show you how we took some technologies that everybody thinks to be very expensive and were able to create products which are in the market, which are being used by people. So what is the new? The new keeps changing. On the extreme left, you have what's the emerging things. You can talk about P4 wellness, multiomics. In the world of AI, you already passed AI. Now we're talking about causal inferencing. Can you think causality from data? Cell tissue engineering. And then is the category what I call shiny, still new, but tested. Applications have been found. In this category, you can see precision oncology in the place of precision medicine. At least in cancer, we know it makes a difference. You can see genomics, many tests, well tested. You can see digital medicine AI application. You saw many things outside before entering over here. There are excellent examples of affordable technology deployments, and of course, biologics. Genomics is the first thing I would talk about, and of course, I am from an Institute of Genomics. And one must remember the very important thing. Why, compared to many other things, is genomics looking to be affordable? And the key moment in history when many of these became possible was in 2013 by the US Supreme Court. At that point, people were patenting genes. You cannot do a BRCA test without paying royalty to the Myriad Pharmaceuticals. There was a very big case between the Association for Molecular Pathology that sued Myriad Genetics in court and said, how can you patent something that exists in nature and is there inside all of us? And the cartoons you see on the right was a fight to take back our genes, freeing our genes. The patient gets the cancer for free, the genes belong to the company. But the fact is that one decision by the US Supreme Court invalidated 4,300 gene patents and made genomics accessible. And the reason I put up this slide is unless we are thinking about this aspect of intellectual property, unless we are thinking about how we will protect the rights of the people, and that's something Dr. Reddy, the Phfi, do very, very well. In many articles, they articulate in the topmost places. There will be nothing called emerging technology deployment for public health. And genomics is a wonderful case where the battle was fought and the battle was won. In the US Supreme Court, no others, so there will be many more battles in time to come. My institute was one of the places where we built the first comprehensive genetic landscape of India. And even when we built this landscape, we were criticized for not using neutral polymorphism that will tell you about populations, but using disease polymorphism. So you will see, for example, CCR5 delta 32 that tells you about the risk of HIV susceptibility. And we chose this for a reason. When you do these mega crore projects for the government, you have to have two things. There is something you might want to learn as a scientist, and there has to be some useful information you can deliver to the people who pay for these studies. So rather than choosing the SNPs that tell you most about where humans migrated from, which is also very important, don't get me wrong, we chose to also look at SNPs that tell you something about HIV susceptibility in this nation, and you can see right here, most of India is extremely susceptible. Now, of course, sometimes you realize that the areas that you show most resistance, like malaria, are also the most endemic, and that's natural selection working in the opposite direction. But one thing we learned from this study, India is the melting pot of humanity when it comes to genetic diversity, and that's really important. These are Europeans, these are Chinese, the Africans remain the most genetically diverse people on this world. The total amount of genetic diversity in Africa is unparalleled because only a small subset of Africa moved and populated the rest of the world. But leaving them apart, you can see that Indians, these are all Indians, we fill the entire gap between the European populations and the Chinese populations. What we also learned was that we are one of the most diverse, but also one of the least diverse countries at the same time. India as a nation is diverse. The subpopulations of India are extremely undiverse. Very restricted gene flow over the course of millennia has led to this diagram shown here, this work by Thangaraj. And all of you who are doctors would remember the word Ashkenazi Jews coming up in your very first chapter on genetics. If you were to create a very simple map, on the y-axis you have frequency, on the x-axis you're looking at length of chromosomal segments identical on both your chromosomes. If you have the same segment on both your chromosomes, it means your parents are related. And the height of the frequency graph will tell you how related they are. So if Ashkenazi Jews, the people that the world describes as the most recessively afflicted, were a hill, Indian subpopulations are mountains. So many Indian subpopulations are far more inbred in terms of gene flow compared to the most flagrant examples you read in your textbooks. So it has a disadvantage. You can see the picture over here. Colors get scattered all over the globe. People are outbred. Over here, even without consanguinity, I'm not talking about communities where marrying your first or second degree members is a practice. I'm talking about standard Indian subpopulations, including many Hindu populations. You see the same colors are there on both sides, causing people to become unhealthy. Example of this perhaps would be the Arya Vaisya Hindu Indian caste with about 2.2 million people. And everybody knows in those areas, if you give these people saxamethonium, they may not wake up after the surgery. In fact, 1 in 24, that's what we are looking at. 1 in 24 people are at risk. So India gives you an opportunity. When you think of it as a nation of nations, you think of populations of low diversity, it gives you the opportunity to create genetic panels which are affordable. But when you think of it in the full scale of a nation, you realize there is no single panel for all of India. So you have to use a bit of smartness in how you go about these things. And another thing about India is, and I gave this talk to David Cameron when we were visiting for Illumina, we are a country where 1 in 1,000 means a million. So rare is 1 in 1,000, but look at the numbers. A million people would be afflicted by a disease. And if people who have these problems will go through 8 physician visits, 3 misdiagnoses, 7 years of diagnosis, and think if they have a disease like inborn errors of metabolism, all the damage to their body that could have been prevented by the right diet at the right time is now done. So fast, effective diagnostics is the need of the hour. Everybody thinks of genomics as a very expensive test. So I'll tell you a very simple case study of something done between my former alma mater, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and IGIB, spinocerebellar ataxia. In 1997, when this work started between our institutions, everybody knew there's lots of ataxia in India. But nobody had the ability to do the genomics inside the country. Dr. I.C. Verma at AIIMS did a good job, but with limited resources. But there was no genomics institute in this country to do this on scale and to build panels. So samples were being sent to foreign labs. Discoveries of new ataxias were being made outside on Indian patients. But India knew very little about the afflicted burden. It took 2 decades, a lot of funders, and a village of people to make this change. The initial communication came between clinicians, Professor Satish Jain at All India Institute and Professor Brahmachari from IGIB, had to be taken over by next generation Mitali Mukherjee and Achal Srivastava, and eventually taken to its fruition by a physician who chose to do his PhD in genetics at AIIMS and continue this work until the end, and so many other people got trained. Nothing can ever substitute for time and effort in these areas when you want to convert to public health, and that's why I'm glad to see how PHFI brings a force of people to bear upon these important areas. What has happened? Today we have the largest repository, almost in the world, in terms of SCA patients. We have structures of mutations, population genetics. We know villages where every 4th family has a carrier. We know villages, Saharanpur, for example, has a Muslim community where you frequently see people born within 3 years. They're unable to move, and these can be prenatal diagnosis can be given. We have been able to build targeted panels for the Indian population. We've been able to collate all those common polymorphisms, mutations, that together account for 90% of the burden coming to AIIMS and convert them into PCR-based tests. And we've even been able to create immortalized cells from these patients that can be used for functional understanding of their disease in the hope of therapeutics. Diagnostics is only half the battle. In the end, you need therapeutics. And I'm very proud to say that when in University of Medicine, Wisconsin, they found a synthetic transcription factor that could act upon the repeats in Friedreich's ataxia to release the trapped transcription elongation enzyme. They came to India for a large number of well-characterized Friedreich's ataxia patients at AIIMS, whose immortalized cells were kept at IGIB. We were differentiating them into neurons, and we could test that new molecule to test efficacy. So public health efforts can never be separated from basic science. That's something I want to say very clearly today. Genomics was very expensive when we started doing it, but national institutes funded well by the government can do the job. But if the same institutes are continuously in conversation with clinicians and public health people, you always retain your focus on how to make tests cheaper. And in that, what we have done is we created this program, Guardian and GoMet. In Guardian, if you have a clinical question, you have a family that you believe has a genetic disease, you can send a sample to IGIB. We will do exome level sequencing if required. We will do any other omics if required. We even knock the gene out in a fish if required if the gene is novel. I have beautiful pictures that I'm not showing today of zebrafish with dilated hearts coming from a family with idiopathic unknown cardiomyopathy. And in the end, we will release that this is genetic variation that may be accounting for the disease. And then what we do is we convert all those exome-derived knowledge into simple PCR-based tests that we call GoMet. A focus on affordability, and then we try to license it out to Indian path labs, and Lal Path Labs has been one of our partners. If you've seen the recent neurodiagnostic panel that Lal Path Lab now gives, within 10,000 rupees, covering almost many major neurological heritable disorders, this is something that each test used to cost 25,000 rupees as a send out until a few years ago. So careful thinking about how to deploy emerging technologies does make a difference. But I'll talk about a few key steps that are very important that you can never forget. And that's very important when you think of government policy. You have to spend money on learning the tricks of the trade. In 2008 and 9, when we sequenced the first full human genome from India, there was a significant amount of outcry from every end. Scientists would ask, what is the scientific question so many human genomes have been sequenced? Pure public health people would ask, why spend a few crores in sequencing a human genome? What do we really get? The answer is this. Because we sequenced the first Indian genome, we also sequenced the first Sri Lankan genome, we also sequenced the first Malaysian genome, and when Qatar wanted to sequence its population, we became the informatics partner. So all these countries you see over here were either sequenced at IGIB, analyzed at IGIB, or done in discussion with IGIB, contributing to our repositories of South Asian genomes, which is now amongst the largest in the world. Well, the number is already old now. The current number is around 3,000 exomes and genomes. And we are sequencing 1,000 more, including people who are healthy 90s and healthy centenarians. These kind of resources allow us to build better prediction engines for the cheaper tests. And these cheaper tests with better prediction engines add value at a public health level. I'm still not saying that we can help people with diabetes. These are complex diseases, but there are enough number of genetic diseases in this country where these kind of information does make a difference. And of course, now the world is moving beyond genomics, moving beyond the world of just personalized medicine. Now the new words are predictive, preventive, personalized, participatory. The entire P4, it's not the genome, it's genome, epigenome, transcriptome, proteome, even the microbiome. And this is all a reality. These are the emerging technologies, no longer just the new. Emerging technologies, nobody fully understands where we're going to go with this. But we do know that all of these things will create a very, very multidimensional space of data, where people, and you can only plot in 3 dimensions, unfortunately, but you can imagine that every possible piece of data has a dimension, and every person is somewhere on that multidimensional space. And what you hope for, and this is just a hope, if this hope is not true, there will never be P4 medicine, that there will be only a few possible trajectories. The number of trajectories has to be less than the number of places where you can be. Otherwise, there will be no solution to these problems, and one hopes there will be a few metastable states of health where people transition to. And from the trajectories, we can plot where they're likely to go. Now, is this relevant to India? I think it is. There is no technology that is ever not relevant to a country of our scale with aspirations of our scale. But we have to think at this point, how are we going to do this? Genomics was a very small problem compared to what I'm talking about with P4 medicine. And this is again from the New England Journal, Lost in Thought, the Limits of the Human Mind and the Future of Medicine. And here are some important lines that I think public health people understand much more than normal doctors do. We provide far less benefit to our patients than we hope. And if the root cause of our challenges is complexity, the solutions are very unlikely to be simple. So even in public health, I think there's a growing realization that simple answers will not solve complex problems. Public health is no longer only about simplicity, it's about simplicity of implementation, complexity in the background. And this again is a line I took from the New England, which is kind of like medical Bible, I guess. They always say the quantum leaps will come not from these devices, but from the inferences you make from them. And here is an important line. At some point, you will never be able to summarize these algorithms in the English language. So if that's going to happen, you have to make this transition of efficiently using large or complex data, very dependent on algorithm, self-learning machines, and that is artificial intelligence. And that's the reason I believe that AI is one of the areas for India to invest in, not just for high-end healthcare, but even for public health. And of course, we could give a variety of reasons, like we have a paucity of doctors who need to use intelligence augmentation to enable the healthcare worker. There are a bunch of reasons why IA are important. But I think the very important message I want to give is the time of AI is now. In itself, it's not new. The concept is 1950s. John McCarthy came to MIT, created the word artificial intelligence, but he thought elevators were intelligent because you push button number 3, it takes you to the third floor. Cybernetics was the branch at MIT that was actually AI, what we know today. And Yan LeCun invented the convolution neural network that everybody talks about from machine learning and computer vision back in 1988. The hype has already come and gone. Today we are in a very real phase. The computational power, the age of medicine, the age of digital data has empowered a bunch of things. And today we realize that given our huge paucity of doctors, and we are much worse than the rest of the world, you need artificial assistants. Let's not call them doctors. I don't think doctors will ever go away. But you need assistants that can work 24/7, be available instantly to everybody. No more waiting for long lines in healthcare. Can you move healthcare to the houses of the people? Can you prevent those people from coming to healthcare centers for routine problems and overloading the system? When Nikhil told me he sees maybe 110, 120 patients in a clinic, not all of them need to be seen at All India Institute by Professor Nikhil Tandon. Can you deal with some of their problems in their own houses? And can you duplicate themselves and grow without aging? By the time you become a top-end doctor, very well trained, you're already around maybe 40 or 50. Another 15 years, you're retired. So you need something that can continuously grow and not start all over again. Otherwise, back to medical school and start all over. And one very important thing that I think doctors need to know very well, the human mind can only handle 5 to 7 pieces of information at a time. Think of how you write down a phone number and you will figure it out. Almost nobody takes the entire number and writes it down. You break it up into little blocks that you can remember. How do you anticipate even working in an ICU with 10, 20 things around you at the same time? So AI is a necessity. There are enough examples. You saw some outside. I will not bore you with them. You know, everybody knows the Google diabetic retinopathy story. I will not bore you with that. I just show you one picture. It is not important to me that using those tools they were able to diagnose diabetic retinopathy. That's been known for a while now. It's just a time coming. What was amazing to me, from those pictures, they could tell age, gender, diabetes, smoker, blood pressure, CV risk. Look at this. I asked my ophthalmologist friends, can you tell the gender of a person by the photograph of the retina? Of course, they laughingly say we can tell the gender before we start looking into their eyes. That's not really the point. But the point is, AI can take you into directions that have simply never been done before. That is the true power of AI. Can you start using these snapshots after adequate validation in the Indian population for determining CV risk? Can you save yourself money? Not having to do 25 different things, perhaps. But it took a lot of data. It took almost 80,000 images, like about 40,000 images to reach 85% accuracy. But today, that has changed. Today, there are new techniques called generative adversarial networks, in which two AIs fight against each end, one side feeding random data almost to the other, to the point they understand what an X-ray is, what a retina is. From that point, there are beautiful new papers showing echocardiography interpretation by an AI engine trained in 800 images. And that's what India needs to focus on. India will never create these large annotated data sets of 20,000 images. Can you find me a good quality free doctor? I don't seem to know one. So the fact is, we have to learn how to work with less and squeeze more out of it. And I'm glad to say that IIT Kharagpur Biomedical Engineering Division is doing some phenomenal work in this area. And of course, perhaps you'll have assistance like this. The NHS has it. I don't think it's as good as the reviews seem to say on the web, but it works. You need to keep people out of healthcare systems unless it's necessary. The most complicated thing was I used to ask, can AI ever take care of patients in terms of prescriptive advice, not just diagnostic? I will not go into details of this paper, but last year around November, it happened for the first time. An AI clinician showed optimal treatment strategies for success in intensive care. It did a much better job than the medical doctors. So challenges for India, I'm going to wind down now. We are a nation of nations, we need data. I recently was a part of an evaluation committee for a UK company that wanted to build some kind of interpretive engine for India. And the only question to them was, what India? In Delhi, the problems are different. In rural Bihar, the problems are very different. The same symptom can mean 100 different things in these geographies. And in Delhi, a maid servant from rural Bihar will have the problems of rural Bihar, not necessarily the problems of Delhi. So you need to be open-minded to these things. I'll not go much further on this except to say that you can generate data at scale. This is data that we generated for 200,000 patients in a single day by 7,500 doctors. And we built some network view of the vision of India and how different things connect to each other. But the most important thing is, we did this study in $10,000. And we did this because we leveraged the distribution system of CIPLA to deliver and receive all the questionnaires, all the forms. So huge cost just went away. So in India, whether to interpret data or to create data or to do anything, you need to think of different models. And that's the message I want to give over here. I'm going to skip past this part. And sometimes you have failures. We build these e-health centers inside shipping containers, hoping to collect great healthcare data from around the country. We have 1 million people served. We have 100+ locations. But we were totally disconnected with the public health system. So we didn't actually gain anything very much, except learn it could be done. The data basically showed us that between a vitamin, an antibiotic, an antihistamine, and a painkiller, that takes care of 90% of the patient care of India. That's pretty much what the data showed us. Everything is symptomatic. You look for a diagnosis, the diagnosis is neck pain. The diagnosis is a rash. The diagnosis is itching. That's what the diagnosis is. There's a reality. So we learned something. So, nothing is a loss when you learn something. New players coming into the market are much better than us. They have the mechanism right. I really like what Global is doing. They have a litmus diagnostic, litmus management, litmus therapeutics. There is no doctor, 200 rupees for a consult. Patient goes in. They're all over the country now. Well, at least in a few states. Odisha, they are there very well. And the doctor is completely on the telmed. They use a decision support system that's a little bit AI-based, mostly rule-based. And even the prescription comes out of an ATM type system based on the doctor punching it in from the other side. So for 200 rupees, it's great. It's Indian innovation at its best. So road ahead, India needs to do a lot, both in terms of the basic science, in public health and clinical science. The efforts are underway. I told you about IGIB efforts. Now there will be a national mission in which about 100,000 people will be sequenced. Cohorts will be built, modeled on the All of Us, modeled on the Baseline Health Project. All this is underway. So I'm one of the coordinators of that, so we are open. So what my promise to you is that the new technologies will impact healthcare quality and public services positively. Business models will change. Red Hat sold Linux profitably. It's a freeware, yet you can sell freeware. There are enough number of people who want you to hold their hand, and they will pay something for it. Regulatory issues are always going to be an issue. There are an issue in genomics, we solve them. There will be an issue in AI, we will solve them. It has to be acceptable to consumers, and there has to be realization. The influencers, the change makers are not always the doctors. And realization of who in the society is a real influencer, the change maker, is essential to disseminate these further. Smart deployment, equitable access, that's what we're all looking for. I think it can be done once we get out of our silo and build a continuous model. And most importantly, we need to be adaptable, we need to change. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this really informative and enlightening talk and explaining how technology could play a foundational role in accomplishing goals of population health and how basic science research can be so well embedded into public health. This is really exciting, sir. Thank you. So we would now like to move on to our next session, which is a panel discussion on role of advancing health technologies that can enable health systems expand access to effective and affordable health services. And for this session, I would request Dr. Reddy, Dr. Agarwal, and Dr. Hasnain to please stay in the dais and would request the other panelists to join us. So we have our first panelist, Dr. Meenakshi Sharma. Dr. Sharma is a scientist at ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, and over the past 10 years, she has worked for cardiovascular diseases, neurosciences, and biomedical engineering, where she has been engaged in formulation, coordination, and monitoring of several key projects of public health significance in the country. Please welcome Dr. Meenakshi Sharma. Our next panelist is Mr. Mohammed Amil, who is a senior consultant in healthcare technologies, medical devices at National Health Systems Resource Center, a WHO collaborating center for priority medical devices and public health technology policy. He spearheads the work of establishing technical specifications for medical devices for procurement under the National Health Mission. He also leads the work of identification and uptake of innovations that are of value to public health programs. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Amin. Our third panelist is Mr. Vishal Fanse, who is the Chief Executive Officer, Piramal Swasthya Management and Research Institute. Mr. Fanse heads the primary healthcare initiative of the Piramal Foundation, built on the principles of Seva Bhav, operating across 14 states in vulnerable communities of India. His work focuses on innovations to scale as a design approach, and he is committed to create platforms for primary healthcare delivery through technology-based connected health platforms as a public good for sustainable impact at scale. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Vishal. And our fourth panelist is our own Dr. Suresh Munuswamy, who is heading Health Informatics and Technology Innovations at Phfi and coordinating the integrated MSc and PhD Health Informatics program at the Institute in Hyderabad. Welcome, Dr. Suresh Munuswamy. This session will be chaired by Professor Hasnain and moderated by Professor Reddy. So over to Professor Reddy. Thank you.
Professor Hasnain is too soft a gentleman to ask hard questions. Therefore, that task has been left to me to try and probe the panelists in terms of how best we can actually apply these technologies to advance public health. The vision of how technology in multiple dimensions can actually advance healthcare has been given by Dr. Agarwal. But the day-to-day problems of ensuring that health services reach the people will require the intermediation of affordable technologies here and now. And therefore, we would like to really explore through our panel how best we can actually, even while waiting for the newer technologies to develop, use the technologies that we already have to better effect. And may I start off by asking Dr. Amil, what are the proactive steps which the government of India is taking for the adoption of medical devices into healthcare programs like Ayushman Bharat, particularly the comprehensive healthcare, primary healthcare component?
Yes, it's working. Thank you, Dr. Reddy. In fact, a very appropriate question for a person like me. Even before the conception of Health and Wellness Center, in fact, medical devices has been a cornerstone for universal health coverage. And we all know that medical devices or health technology would range from a diagnostic device like a MRI machine to a therapeutic device like a dialysis, a protective device like a condom to a assistive device like a spectacle. And throughout the globe, people are suffering because of lack of access and affordability of these devices. One of the biggest example is CT scan, which was invented 50 years ago, is still inaccessible and unaffordable. And the reason I find behind is probably because of the oligopoly nature of this thing. So coming on to your question, Noksam, we also believe that technology and innovation is specifically required in those areas where there is lack of access to supplies, infrastructure, or specialized human resource. As we understand that health and wellness centers are those centers with expanded range of services, but the specialized human resource, we may not be able to have a laboratory technician at the sub-center health and wellness center or even a medical doctor. So what we are envisaging at is, or in fact, let me take a step back and explain what initially was happening at a primary health center. Normally, states were requesting to have semi-auto analyzers, for example, for biochemistry tests. So this is a very technology intensive equipment. We've been copying from the Western procuring semi-auto analyzers. It's a very skill intensive test. You have to incubate the sample, you have to do pipetting, you have to put it in the analyzer and make a noting. So many error prone is this thing. So when we constituted the first time this committee on point of care diagnostics, and Professor Jha was also a part of it, we first of all publicized and in fact advertised on what point of care diagnostics could be a part of health and wellness centers. And we got some very amazing submissions for point of care diagnostics for health and wellness centers. And the list which has been drafted is under a review and approval of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So maybe I won't be able to get you into the specific as of today, but a very good point of care diagnostics which could be used by non-specialized human resource. And this is the way what is the future going to be. Not only point of care diagnostics, but also self-use devices. A recently study in JAMA showed that how people who manage or diagnose their own BP, glucose, can manage their hypertension, diabetes better than others. And we all know that. And this is how we have to empower the community to be able to access these diagnoses in a much more affordable way and look into newer technologies which are close to the community and not complex as the initial ones were.
Thank you. Since much of the healthcare delivery, especially in the primary healthcare, has to be done through state government agencies, how receptive are the state governments to the technologies that NHSRC, for example, recommends after evaluation? So what's the time lag between your recommendation and the penetration into the routine healthcare system?
Very good question indeed. So for this, in fact, for newer technologies, we have a process called, in fact, a portal called National Health Innovation Portal. And people around here who are keen on innovations, know innovators, their networks, I would request you to please tell them about this National Health Innovation Portal, where innovators could submit their innovative products, which go through a health technology assessment. Now, health technology assessment, the focal agency has been identified as Department of Health Research, NHSRC being one of the technical partners. I know IIPH Gandhinagar is also one of the technical partners. Once this goes through a proper health technology assessment, then the states are showcase these innovations in the annual best practices summit and the innovative summit. This year it was held in Kaziranga. And states then propose this into their program implementation plan or PIP. And once this was approved in health technology assessment, usually this innovation is uptaken in this year itself. So normally for a good technology which is ready to uptake takes almost a 1 year time from assessment to uptake. So recently there was, I won't take the brand name, but there was a non-invasive hemoglobinometer, or rather a minimally invasive hemoglobinometer developed at IIT Delhi. It was showcased in last National Best Practices Summit, Innovative Summit. And this year, a lot of states have proposed their in their PIP and have been approved as well for minimally invasive hemoglobinometer. And I'm sure this technology is going to revolutionize the way that we test hemoglobin. Earlier, it was Sali's method. So a non-availability of N/10 hydrochloric acid and specialized human resource. So this is another point of care diagnostic which is going to revolutionize the way we look at things.
Thank you. Vishal, you have been working with Piramal Swasthya in primary health care. And of course, you have to deal with not only government health systems, but actually people on the front line, the health workers who deliver services, especially the non-physician healthcare providers. How are you actually managing to engage them and to enlist their participation, retain their interest, and utilize these technologies to maximum advantage?
3 years ago, I did not have gray hair. When I learned about the Vodafone platform, we tried to figure it in terms of primary healthcare and public health, and things started going great. So, we kind of serve more than 1 million beneficiaries every month. So, data we had, and we work in 20 states.
Dr. Agarwal suggested, there was a lot of load on the health infra side. We wanted to create something which was beneficiary centric, so something like an integrated electronic medical record, and which the next key stakeholder of which would be the frontline health worker. We went across the world, we tried to look at different models that had worked, we realized very quickly that this has to be a public good, this has to be IP India, this has to be free, we are talking primary healthcare, multiple stakeholders have to lie on top of it, and if you look at it as a pizza base, all kinds of delivery channels can rest on it as mushroom or chicken as a pizza topping, including things like CDSs. All of this needed to be simple, all of this needed to be tried out and worked upon so that whether the beneficiary talks on a health information helpline or goes to a mobile medical unit or to a health and wellness center, PHC, district hospital, the flow of data has to be managed, and then everything else, IoT, everything else can sit on top of this. So this we learned from all. We saw a lot of innovation coming in because we work with the community and we work with frontline health workers who are part of the community. We got them to help us to design the entire thinking process was done with them. I think today we are at a stage where because it is made with their inputs, it is something that they can take decisions on. When we are talking about the frontline health workers, it is something that they can understand, they can use to make their own job better, more effective, efficient, prioritized. They have the power now. That is actually, now the AAA framework is talking to each other. It wasn't that difficult. I think technology is a key enabler. Platform is a key word. Even if all my hair grows grey, I think we would want to do it. India needs it.
What do you feel are the major barriers in getting through the permission cycle for use of these technologies when you are trying to innovate and then trying to test them out in the field? What are the barriers that you have faced and how have you overcome them?
So for a long time, more than a decade, we were working more or less on the demand side. We were working at the community, beneficiary facing, all of that. But in recent times, we have been working with the aspirational districts, and now we have a great insight on the supply side as well. So the eureka moment for us as a not-for-profit was, yeah, district transformation ho sakta hai, but for that demand and supply has to come together. Now, demand and supply, the interventions that we plan which are sustainable, which need to be sustainable impact at scale, if they lay on top of such a platform, that kind of completes the platform view. Now, the challenges would be to, luckily, because we work very closely with state governments, we have gotten much better at, some states are quite more proactive now in our opinion. The center is backing us. I think in aspirational districts, we will be able to launch this, in fact, next month, prove it at that scale. We need to learn. We need several partners coming in, analytics engine to be built on it, Google AI or some partners like that coming in, because platform is kind of a very long-term approach. It's a 30-40 year approach at least. So the right kind of stakeholders need to come in and take this up. I think this getting the right mix of partners, and this has to belong to the government. That will be key over the next year.
Dr. Meenakshi, Basically, Dr. Wheeler said that it is the Department of Health Research and ICMR who are steering some of the process of technology evaluation. And I know that you have played a major role, along with the Innovation Foundation of India, in trying to identify potential technologies with promise and getting them at the Rashtrapati Bhavan every year to have a major exhibition of all these technologies. And then after having assessed some of them, passing them on to NHSRC for further evaluation and introduction to the system. How has that experience been? Has it really yielded results in terms of promising technologies? You also had the idea of trying to link some of these innovators with potential investors. And again, how has that experience worked?
Sir, I must say that you have been a guiding force for that particular initiative of ICMR. Being a chairperson, you always guided us how to select those technologies, how to go about that. But what we actually did was that we realized that there are no platforms where the innovators can display the technologies and the country can know that what are the things which are being produced by them. And somehow there has to be a platform where the different stakeholders can interact together and watch those technologies and pick up them if they are relevant for our country. So National Innovation Foundation, this provided us that platform to display some of the technologies at Rashtrapati Bhavan. So we actually asked all players, whether they were our medical institutes, IITs, engineering colleges, universities. I think we went almost everywhere asking them whether you have anything in the pipeline. Please let us know, and we will try to see that which are the ones, 40 or 50 of them, which have some public health significance. So we did undertake a very competent review process, and we were able to shortlist. In the first school only, we had around more than 300 something technologies. Within 20 days, we were able to receive that kind of flow to us. And some of them, they appear to be promising too. Similarly, in the next 2 years also, we started receiving around 500, 600 technologies because we asked the ministry also to come over there and view those technologies and see if some of them they are useful. For example, I will mention that we were not looking only at the devices, we were also looking at innovative pathways which could help to provide the healthcare in the remote areas. So one of the models which we displayed over there and was supported by ICMR was the STEMI care model, which was developed by Dr. Thomas Alexander and his colleagues. And this was a hub and spoke model. This model made possible that PCI could be given to even a BPL cardholder within a very short span. And the linkage was done to ambulances and all systems were in place. And when we took it to NHM, so I'm very happy to say that this has been taken up now by the state government, Tamil Nadu state government, and other states like Karnataka, Telangana, Goa, now Gujarat, MP. They submitted their project implementations for taking up this this particular model. And we hope that this model will enable to provide STEMI care to our patients. But we are not restricted to that only. We went on further. We are trying to develop thermolytic hubs, and we'll be using telemedicine for that purpose also. Similarly, one of the technology which we, Dr. Reddy, if you remember that we was discussed during that meeting, that was for TB diagnostics. Gene Expert, this is now coming better than the Gene Expert, which has been advocated by WHO. And TrueNat. TrueNat was the one which we showcased over there. And then finally it came into the vision of the healthcare providers. And now this is being taken to a different height together. The sensitivity is much more better than the Gene Expert. And perhaps we are also asking WHO to take it over so that it can be utilized for detecting more number of TB cases. There were other number of other things like that motorcycle that which could there was a auto analyzer on the motorcycle lab bike which was taken to the African countries and they took that diagnostics also there. And recently I've been told that the state governments are taking it up. So I think these kind of showcases, they have an impact and they make these innovators come face to face with the stakeholders. And ICMR provides a way so that we can take these technologies to National Health Mission and provide them a wider platform. So this is.
Many of the innovations come up with proof of concept studies. Of course, some of them just come up with a possible statement of benefit, but some of them actually go through some proof of concept studies. But ultimately, their validation depends on field trials in the population, in the community setting. Now, they may engage with the health system to do that, or they may do large-scale trials on their own. What is the process of actually doing these kind of clinical trials in the field? What are the difficulties in terms of the ethical clearances and the safeguards to protect patients? At the same time, some of the tortuous clinical trials regulations that till recently existed, I've just seen that they've been relaxed a bit. So how does the Department of Health Research and ICMR guide this process?
So what has happened is that as far as you are very right, that our innovators, mostly they are engineers if you come to the medical devices, and they have little knowledge of how the trials have to be done. So we were approached by DBT, DBT, and what they are asking is that we lead the clinical trials for the innovators, and that is something which is being worked out, and we'll be looking at the innovations they have done, because these innovations were done in a silo kind of thing, that for the engineers were making something, and somehow whether the requirement is there in the health sector or not, that was not really evaluated. So once we have that evaluation, I think we'll be taking some of these up. I personally have a stroke clinical network and which has 25 centers, and this is on for the last 2 years. This is the first clinical network to be supported by the government sector, and we are and fourth around the world supported by a government, first in the developing countries. So we are hoping that these networks will be utilized by our investigators for undertaking the trials for the medical devices. Yes, the regulations have to be smoothened out. There is a lot which is happening over there. We have AMTAZ, the government initiative, in which a medical device zone has been created in the south, and similar kind of replication will be done around the country. 4 or 5 zones, more zones are being promised. But what we found was that similar things, simple things, for example, for the MRI machine, we do not have the electromagnet technology development, that know how to develop the electromagnet that is missing in the countries. And somehow we have to, somehow AMTZ has been coming up forward with a concept by which that can be done in country. And we are hoping that once this is done, then the cost of these machines are going to come down. So government has a number of policies along with the TU, and we are supporting each of their activities.
Thank you. Dr. Suresh Munswamy is one of our own. To those who are not aware of his background, he is a medical doctor who is actually also trained in public health and also done a PhD in the area of biomedical engineering. And stationed at Hyderabad, he is our drone acharya. He hit the front pages of the newspapers locally for having developed with his students in health informatics. He guides the program of MSc PhD in health informatics at our institute. He developed a drone delivery system for medicines, and that brought Boeing, actually Boeing came in to find out how they could actually link up with him. Nothing to do with the new crash planes, I can assure you. Anyway, he has also developed other technologies like the icon-based data entry systems and so on. But critically, Suresh, what do you see as the gaps in the existing implementation of public healthcare systems? And how can new technologies bridge that gap?
Well, thank you very much, sir. When the president of the organization that I work for asks a question, that too in public, it feels like a public viva here. So, and since this is election season, I'll have to refer back to Ramayana, I guess. Ramayana is not one single story, and it's actually a collection of several hundreds of stories. And I think it kind of also reflects our public health system. There are hundreds of things that actually have to work together so that our public health system really works. And this is basically the first challenge. It is not one single silver bullet that's going to really transform our public health care. And the challenge here is when you again go back to Ramayana, there are a lot of small stories here. And you kind of have to cross 7 seas to reach out to something. And each target is a little bit more complex than the next one. And if you look at it from the perspective of our population, the easiest to reach is the first billion. The toughest to reach is the last 7th billion. And most of the 7th billion actually lives in our country. And what technology actually gives you is a platform. So it has been proven that you can actually reach billions of people. The first 1, 2, or 3 billion of people have been reached. And the challenge here to reach the last 1 or 2 billion people is the actual lack of content and the structure. And when you again look at the 7 billion people, a lot of these first billion people are fairly homogeneous. They speak only a few languages, majority English. But if you look at the last billion people, they speak literally thousands of languages. And that's the first challenge here. And thankfully, at least we have come out with a solution with our icon-based software and tried to self-market here, at least the innovations that we have done at PHFI. So we have come out with a solution that transcends language. So we have come out with a software that does not have language. All you need to do is look at the icons, ask the questions, hit the plus or minus button, and hopefully it does the differential diagnosis and we can start up the treatment. The second challenge basically is the content. It actually, we have done it for some small diseases, but then there are actually hundreds of diseases. It's not one single disease which actually affects the kind of population. Can we scale it up to hundreds of diseases? Can all these things actually work together? And that becomes the first challenge. And when it actually even works, healthcare is not simply asking questions and possibly doing magic. It also needs a completely efficient supply chain on the back end. And that is where we are hoping that our drones could actually fly at some point of time and reach out to all these people and then supply with whatever healthcare supplies that are actually needed. So we are trying to kind of raise a lot of questions and hopefully answer them with a bunch of technologies, starting with artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and even graphic design, which is where our icons are actually designed. And we hope that all these multiple technologies at some point of time work together in a comprehensive way so that our primary healthcare system could actually become a lot better. So the answer to that is there's no one single technology that could actually kind of answer the questions, but a lot of them could actually need to be asked and then developed. And what we are hoping to do is, and as Dr. Anurag Agarwal said, we are trying to push all the complexity to the back end. These are complex challenges. These are challenges that have 1,000 dimensions. And the answers have to look simple, but all the complexity has to be pushed into the background. And that is where new technologies can actually help us. Things like augmented reality, artificial intelligence, make things appear a lot more simple so that we can actually take these technologies to the people and answer the simple question. And here again, I will go to Ramayana, wherein after the end of the story, people still ask the question, how is Rama and Sita related? And this again resonates with the question that our main speaker actually asked. At the end of all these technologies, we still ask the question, did we ever change anything in the healthcare system in our country? The answer is still something that we need to actually develop. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll wait for you to subject the technologies to Agni Pariksha then. May I now ask Dr. Hasnain, you heard how engineers and public health system designers and public health delivery agencies have to work together in order to develop and deploy technologies to maximum advantage. But generally, there has not been much conversation between these worlds. You have successfully gone into the IIT, managed to change the minds of engineers there into looking at biology-based research, and really established some sort of a transdisciplinary research platform. How can we do this on a larger scale for public health, bringing in many more disciplines, but particularly in the area of technology, where you require many disciplines. You need engineers and public health people to work together, you require designers, you require people from the law side, data physicists, you require so many people to actually see how these technologies can be best utilized for public interest. But at least even in the development and evaluation, how do you bring different disciplines together?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Reddy. I think I'll go back to what Munuswamy just mentioned. We are now actually looking at a scenario where we are, all of us who talk today are, I would not even say the first billion, I would say the first 500,000 of our population. Billion is still a long number. If you include the Western economies, yes, first billion. Exclude the Western economy, where the bulk of the population lives, that is us and China and Bangladesh and this part of the world, I think we have a long way to go. It is good to discuss these things today and talk about it, but to make an impact, I'm just thinking about, I'm also associated with the Aga Khan Foundation, member of the Foundation Trust. And we have programs in Bihar, programs in UP, programs in other parts of the country where we are making a change. But that change to occur, I don't think we are even closer to what we are looking at, the technology-based change. Yes, it is happening. But I think, in my opinion, we have a very long way to go. This is truly a challenge for us. When we have no electricity, we can always claim that every village is electrified and we have drinking water and we have open defecation is finished, closed. But ground realities are different. And let's accept that. One thing is what you read in the newspapers and what you find actually when you go there, there's a big contrast. So I think what we are trying to do, in my opinion, I may be very wrong, but I think I've been traveling a bit here and there, looking at playing a role in this. Besides, people ask me, how do you manage your time? 2 days in a week, I don't go to my office. I go to IIT Delhi, where I have a big lab. But I also use my time to see what are the ground realities. One more challenge that we have is all of our technologies today are looking at disease amelioration. How can we, if I have a disease, how can I come out of it? I think it's also equally important to look at disease prevention. Can we prevent the disease? That's where somebody was telling me when I went to a place, small place, very small town. ये बड़े-बड़े कंपनी वाले ये बेच रहे हैं because उनको उसका फायदा होता है. And when I looked at it, I said, this is actually giving results. But then when I go back and think about it, I said, maybe there's a truth in there. So we may come out with wonderful technologies, but if we don't look at the fundamental problem कि हमें ये बीमारी क्यों हुई? Good pollution-free air, safe drinking water, basic healthcare. I think these 2-3 things, if we can provide, much of the problem that we are trying to address will not exist. I may be wrong in my assessment, but this is what we have today in India. We have two Indias: India that we are living in day today in Delhi, and Bharat that we don't see. We think all Bharat is India. All Bharat is not India. And unless we recognize that there is a divide, Bharat is different, India is different, and we try to bridge the divide, this will be good, this will be effective. As Manuswamy rightly said, I think we need to embark on new technology. We need to embark on disruptive technology. In the IIT, I can tell you, the IIT now, when I've been there for almost 8 years now, it's a wonderful place. Everybody talks about new things. We have now an impedance-based glucometer. You don't need to do anything. You just put this device here, it only measures the impedance. And one of the lectures that I've been giving is, you talk about signal transduction. What do we do in medicine? You look at the blood flow, that is also impedance. So if we can, and people are actually developing a device where you just put your device on your hand, it will tell you how much is the sugar, without prick, without anything. That is the inquisitive mind. That is the challenge that people are taking. But then to, one simple device people develop, nasal filters. I think it's a very promising thing. Nasal filter you can prevent. At least you can prevent. I can prevent myself from getting the polluted air getting into our system. But we are forgetting. Can we not look at how we can solve a problem faced by farmers in Punjab and Western Uttar Pradesh, stubble burning? Today, the air quality is very good. Sometimes the iPhone air quality index is blocked. I don't know who orders them to be blocked. But the but you're fooling yourself by saying that I will not let you know what is my air quality index. This can happen only in a country like India. But at the same time, there are other apps that can tell me how good is the quality. Because that is one app that I use to at least turn on the air purifier in my home. But if that Apple air quality indicator is not there, I can't. So we need to find out, can we look at why is it not economical? The other day, we had a lecture in my university. They started distinguished lectures. We invite you and Professor Ramadurai and others to come and talk to us about it. One of a very eminent member of parliament coming from the so-called royal family of politics. He's a member of parliament. Very enlightened person. I had a different view about him till he came to my lab. Came to my institution. And when he talked about it, he said, why would a farmer use a new technology when it's much cheaper for him to burn it? So that's a problem. Unless we address that problem, pollution will grow. And pollution, all of us with medical background will understand that this is one of the problems of COPD. I mean, almost everything is linked. Syndrome X, you talk about it, all linked to that. So I think we need to look at what is real Bharat and what is India. I think we are doing wonderful things but there will be a big effort needed, big challenge to to address the problems of Bharat. Indian problems of India, I think we will and we can address it. Problems of Bharat, I'm not too sure. Till we go into the root cause. Sorry if I've taken...
No, thank you very much, sir. You've given a very broad dimension to public health, and which is what public health is.
Absolutely.
We say that public health ranges from molecules to markets, and therefore it links everything there in terms of the societal factors. But you really gladdened my public health heart by talking about the importance of prevention, and therefore I cannot ask any more hard questions. Therefore, I leave it to the audience to ask the hard questions. So now we have audience interaction. So I'm not like a TV anchor asking the hardest questions. It's you can ask. So you can ask what India wants to know.
There's a hand at the back. Yes. Would you like to just say who are you, where are you coming from, and that's it, and then ask it.
Okay, so good evening to all of you. I'm Dr. Mukut. I'm with Dr. Ashok, heading the NACO project in Phfi. And sir, the word which you said, prevention, keeping that in mind, my question is, why in India, the vulnerable population, or I would say the key population, which comprises female sex workers, men having sex with men, injection drug users, truckers and migrants, had been neglected in the aspect of technology for preventing HIV?
I don't know if I have the answer to that, but all I can tell you that I think, as I said in my remarks, that technology is there. The gap is, I think one of us mentioned affordability. How many of us can afford? There was a question raised here that we have the PET scan. We have now MRI, which is increasing in Tesla values. Technology is one I would say, which increases logarithmically every few months. Literally. Look at the iPhone itself, look at the smartphone itself. I think we need to make sure that whatever technology that we are getting, is it affordable? And that is where I must also bring to the notice of people here. There's a wonderful activity started by a former director of IIM Ahmedabad, Anil Gupta. Many of you may have known him. I've worked with him also in selecting young innovators and very smart people who are very young and fund them to develop something. This is the kind of approach that is needed. If you go, to answer your question, why we are still there where we are, we should have been much better. As in my opinion, technology has not got pace with the need for technology. We have technology. How many can actually afford it? I think that is perhaps right, in my opinion. I may be wrong.
May I call upon Dr. Preeti Kumar, who has been working very much in the area of HIV/AIDS with National AIDS Control Organization. She's our Vice President Health Systems, and she has been working in some of these areas as well. Maybe you might like to respond.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. I think actually condoms is the best technology for this epidemic. And really, you mentioned it right at the beginning of your talk, that there are very simple technologies, but what really comes into play is how do we ensure their simple questions of accessibility, how can we use technology to really change mindset of people and populations to actually use it. So particularly in HIV, there has been a lot of use of technology. Point of care testing has come in now, and my colleagues do know that it is being scaled up. But yes, the widespread utilization is more important. And second is technology definitely has a big role to play, but there's a huge area of behavior and how we actually respond as human beings, as individuals to disease. And I don't have the answers how technology really addresses that, but it does provide a lot of solutions to common issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Professor Hasnain, I have...
Suresh wants to provide a supplementary answer.
Yes, there is a company which is actually trying to address this by looking at it in a slightly different way. The reason why people engage in so-called activities is because they spend overnight in a strange place instead of going home. So what a company has actually done is it has actually converted this trekking activity into a relay duty, meaning you start from the morning and then somewhere in the middle in the afternoon, you actually get into a different truck which goes into the opposite direction, so that most of the truckers actually go home. So you don't really get a chance to kind of engage in sex with men or perhaps any other activities because you are more or less at home. The challenge here is, has it been scaled up? Now, in a small country like Israel, or possibly in a smaller country, where all the truck drivers come home or go to a safe place, a lot of these things actually don't happen. But in a country like India, where you will have to spend days doing trucking, it's a bit of a challenge. But again, here technology is actually helping to make sure that people actually reach a safer place so that they are actually tracked continuously and possibly try to reduce in the activities they could otherwise be indulging in.
Yeah, my question, Professor Hasnain, to you and the panel is, it appears to be a little naive, but please understand. The best technological device that is now available in Bharat is the mobile phone. I mean, you name it, people may not be ready to eat sufficiently, but they want to have a good phone. That's what is happening. We, as the technical people, and you have a combination of IIT and this and that, and our friends from Government of India are also here. Have we not failed in exploring this one device which is ubiquitously available, owned by people themselves, and has a potential to be used as a point of diagnosis, point of care? We have failed. As a country, I personally feel very irrespective whether we are in public health or whether we are in clinical care, we have not utilized the potential of this one device which you don't have to own and for which you don't have to pay anything. People are paying for that.
I think it's a very good question you have raised, and I can understand why it is coming from you being a former Director General of Health Services in Maharashtra, big state like Maharashtra. Today it's estimated that about 0.7 billion people of our country have a smartphone. 0.7 billion, that's a big number. Not only do they have smartphone, but they also at least have working, they may not be literate, but they're working knowledge of figuring out. And that is where I think today's technology, many of the technologies, including what the two platforms that we have developed, or not developed, we're developing, I would say, we have made them smartphone enabled. A person sitting in the village, after getting a result, yes TB or no TB, can immediately be contacted at the DOTS clinic in Delhi or DOTS clinic in the nearby places and said, "Inko TB hai, inko kya dawa diya jaye." I think that is what is the need of the day-to-day. I fully agree with you. We have not married this technology prowess that we have. We really have a technology. I don't think any other country in the world has this kind of technology, at least the smartphone access that we in India have. I'll tell you another problem is, some of the smart technologies that we have, good in the innovative technologies that we have, there's issue of penetration, scaling up and penetration. It mostly stays within the metropolitan cities. We need to, the agencies that Meenakshi talked about and others talked about, they need to come together to find out how we can make it penetrate and make it affordable and make it usable by many. I'm not saying that PET scans will be in village centers, but you don't need to come to the PET scan to take a PET scan. There are other things that can be done at much early stages. So I think these are challenges before us, and this is indeed a challenge.
So you are very right that mobile technologies can be used by the healthcare sector for providing care to our patients, diagnostics and other things. I think Dr. Prabhakaran and Dr. Nikhil Tandon, they have done a number of studies on using mobile technologies in hypertension and other cases. In our case also, ICMR, when I talked about the stroke clinical network, the first trial which we are conducting, this is messaging through mobile phones for stroke rehabilitation, so that the recurrence of stroke is not there. So, but definitely there are many challenges when we start to make up those kind of workbooks, those kind of SMS. Then those are the clinicians, when they make those SMS, then they realize they make it too complicated, which are not understandable by the common people. So you have to come to that kind of place where you can really talk to the people. But the next challenge with the videos and the SMS messages which we are facing is exactly what Dr. Hassan has said, that these will be targeting the population which already has something. These are not the illiterate population. How do you give these messages to the illiterate population? They cannot read. If you're telling them that this is a hypertension, you have to go for your checkup for blood pressure. Simple thing. How do we tell that patient who is an illiterate over there? And the mobile phones which they are having, because we are missing our patients. I've got 25 centers, and there are a number of patients which we are not able to enroll because they are illiterate. So now what the next challenge we have said, you go in for voice messages. So we are thinking in those directions, but then we come out again for that video messages or the clips. If we want some photos to be used for the illiterate population, they cannot be done on the simple mobile phone. We have to find a balance, find means to reach these people. Actually, this is the one who require it. If you're giving messages to the population, urban population, which already has access to CT scans, which is already has access to the healthcare system, I don't think we are fulfilling their needs. We have to find certain things which can reach the poorer population.
This is very simple what you have told. These are the challenges. The point that I'm trying to make, this is where the engineers, technologists, and the physicians, clinicians will have to come together. These are the challenges. So, what solutions? The engineering solutions will have to come from IITs, and the challenges need to be posed by people like you and us, the doctors. So, I think this is where India, as a India, we have not made that much progress. We have technology available, n number of IITs, very great specialist engineers are there, and doctors जितने चाहे उससे ज़्यादा भी हैं. So the fact remains, how do we marry all these three together and come out of the solution? जब हम
we are actually finding solutions, as you know, the Empower study, which has linked our Indian Institute and PHFI, has actually been carried out in Himachal Pradesh in the hilly areas and remote areas. And again, the value of mHealth has been very clearly demonstrated. But I think in terms of devising solutions with graphics and all others, it would be very important. I'm going to hand over to our speaker of the day, Dr. Anurag Agarwal, to also pitch in on this question. But because this is going to be the last question, I'm going to offer an opportunity to anybody who has any other question to ask of Dr. Agarwal.
Yes, I do.
Yes, please.
I'm Dr. Rati Godrej from Mumbai. I'd like to ask that since it appears that the future of public health is technology in terms of making an impact, there's a lot of data being collected, including genetic data, profiles, history, medications. Is there enough innovation going on in securing that data, protecting it, not being used for purposes which are not helpful to the patient or the society?
Yeah, you can take that question first and then end with.
I take that question first. In the national mission for collection of large-scale data, data integrity, data privacy, and ethical usage are all inbuilt components. In fact, it's being integrated in the national inter-cyber-physical mission to create sufficient safeguards and layers. So, as a country, from the point of view of implementation of data privacy, I mean, Aadhaar has already been done. I think nobody in the world has ever done things of that scale before, including biometrics. So, yes, the competence is there, the thought is very much there, and a dedicated team of ethicists is looking at the project. Coming back to your question regarding the optimal use of mobile phones, one of the critical areas in this is natural language processing. And to be very honest, messages, exactly as Meenakshi said, in a country with high literacy will never do it. And fundamentally, there's another problem with the overburdened medical system. A patient goes and speaks to a doctor about 20 things. And I blame myself, including anybody else. You're only listening for the keywords that are important to you to get that patient turned around and out the gate. A lot of valuable information always gets missed. I think almost the entire future of healthcare in the Indian context, if there is one application of AI that's going to be absolutely critical, it's going to be NLP, in which, and you already seen what Google Assistant showed recently, right? Almost have a conversation. India, the challenge is more with dialects, different voices. But I think, and this has already been talked about in multiple places that I've been, that if you want to focus a lot of efforts across India and the engineering colleges to one thing, get the NLP right. If you get the NLP right, giving advice, understanding questions, and dissemination will become important. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. It's been a very enriching and interesting discussion, but we will have to now conclude the session related to the panel discussion. On a lighter note, may I say, as the engineers now get exhorted by Dr. Salukya and others to go around trying to develop new mobile technologies, can you also please develop some technologies to reduce the call drops?
That's important. Thank you, Dr. Reddy, for moderating this session, and thank you all panelists for a very interesting round of discussion. So, in the interest of time, we have to close this session, and I would like to thank everybody for providing insight on the strategic role of technology that can that it can play for improvement of health system, and thanks to the audience for an excellent interaction. May I now request Professor Reddy to kindly felicitate Dr. Anurag Agarwal for an excellent talk. Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. And I would request Dr. Reddy to kindly felicitate Dr. Hasman, Professor Hasman. Um, May I now request Dr. Andrew Rao to kindly come on stage and felicitate two of our panelists, Dr. Sharma, Dr. Meenakshi Sharma, and Dr. Amin. So, yes, engineer. Thank you. And I would request Dr. Sanjay Zorpe to kindly come on stage and felicitate Dr. Vishal, Mr. Vishal, Mr. Vishal Fanze. Sir. And Dr. Munuswamy.
Just for clarification, I understand that the Germanic origin of the word doctor is a teacher, doctor. So anybody who teaches is a doctor. So all of you are teachers, you are taught us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you, Professor Zorpe. Thank you, Dr. Reddy. As we come to the end of this event, I need to thank a few people without whom this seamless celebration of our Foundation Day would not have been possible. I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation for PHFI admin team. I think we need to give a big round of applause. The IT team who have been continuously covering this event for the global audience. Then I would also like to thank the health technologies team, the communication team, the PhD chambers for providing us with this venue and support, our students, researchers, senior management, and faculty. I would like to thank each and everyone in the audience, as well as our global audience who are listening and viewing us from different corners of the world, to take time out of their busy schedule and join us for this evening. I would now request everyone to kindly stand for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
वो देख रहे थे। अच्छा वैसे आ जाएगा ना, देखेंगे
उसके बाद भी तो मिल जाना चाहिए, नहीं तो हमारे पास होगा।
हाँ हाँ, वही